Hi everyone, this is Garrison, Firing Kingdoms at War. I'm coming to you today to talk to you a little about making a rocky outcropping, difficult terrain for your War Machine games. What I started with for this piece is just a simple piece of a hardboard. Okay, and so the stuff that's smooth on one side and has a texture on the other. Cut it in an irregular ovular shape, and the reason this is such a big piece is because I want to put my rocky outcroppings on this terrain, and then have room for miniatures to be able to be placed to maneuver through this terrain. So what I did is I am going to use blue styrofoam. This is a 2-inch thick styrofoam. You could use 1-inch thick, but you can get some nice big pieces with this 2-inch stuff. Alright, the way I basically carved the styrofoam is I did use a little bit of hot wire cutting, but it really wouldn't be necessary. And what I did was I used mostly a steak knife to get these irregular escarpments and irregular cuts through the styrofoam. So what you basically do is you take your blue foam, and this is just a piece of scrap just to illustrate the point. What you do is you cut in, and then using the blade you just kind of break off a piece. And what you end up with is kind of these irregular cuts. So you can do that, all around your styrofoam piece at different angles. And then before you know it, there's a piece that can cut both ways. All right, before you know it, you've got a kind of an irregular stone piece. All right, so first thing we need to do is glue these on here. Alright, now before I do that, sometimes because of this extruded polystyrene or styrofoam, the styrofoam that you get from a hardware store and so forth, it needs a little bit of sanding where there's still some flaking from the cuts. So I just go in there and I smooth out. Sometimes I smooth, depending on what you like, I smooth my edges a little bit too. What I don't want is anything flaking later on. Alright, so I just kind of make sure if there's any loose bits. You can see it coming off there probably in the video. If there's any loose bits, that's taken care of. Don't worry if there's some irregularities and there's some parts of your stone that are smooth and some that aren't. You'll see in the stages beyond there's a way we're going to deal with that. What I'm basically going to do is glue these down in a pattern that looks good to me. Again, I've got enough empty space on this board that there's room for to maneuver for the figures, you might say. I could also put this big piece on here. I'm just debating. Okay, I think I'll go with the smaller piece. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on here. Okay, glue it to my board as well. Got a couple of smaller pieces, more for kind of just the flavor of the piece than anything else. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do after this dries is apply some larger stones around the bases of this, things that maybe have fallen off for a time, a little debris. So when that glue sets, I'll show you that stage in just a second. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my boulders and now glued onto this hardboard base. And now we need to talk about texturing a little bit. Styrofoam makes good boulders. If you paint it up, it'll usually look right. One of the problems though is you tend to get, when you cut, especially some of the thicker styrofoam pieces, some irregular kind of jaggedy bits that even if you sand them down, they're not going to look quite right. Or you can disguise it with lichen or foliage or static grass or whatever you want to use. But I love, for texturing styrofoam so it looks even more like stone, this Liquitex Stucco product, which is an artist supply material that you can get at a store like Michael's Craft Store. It's about $10 a jar, but a jar will last you a long time. So inside here, what you've got basically have is a paste, and when you apply it to the styrofoam, it's going to give it a kind of a rocky texture. So you put some on your butter knife or your craft knife, whatever you want to use, and you apply it. Really, you don't need a thick coat. You're wasting the stuff if you do. You just want enough to give it a texture. Alright, and so this is more than I really need for this top area. So you apply this stuff and you coat your styrofoam boulders in it, and then at the end of the day you're gonna have a really nice texture. When this is going on here and drying, you might doubt me and you might say, just looks like gunk, but it really leaves a nice texture. Most of this is transparent and invisible to the eye right now, but trust me, when it's done, it is going to look awesome. Alright, so you apply this all over your stone. One of the reasons you don't want to go on too thick is not only is it a waste of the product, this stuff takes a while to dry. Okay, so that's one of the reasons too that you want to go on nice and thin and spread this stuff around. Alright, so I'm going to coat my boulders here in this Liquitex Stucco and let that dry, which will take a while. I'm not going to have you sit around on camera while I do that, of course, but we'll let that dry and then we'll go on to the next step. So Liquitex Stucco, awesome stone effects. Okay, I'll be back in just a second.